our last video, we painted this bluebird with the beautiful cobalt teal blue and indigo. And then what happened was one of my students over at school painted it, and all of a sudden the bird was painted from underneath with the feathers from above. And I thought, wait a minute. Anyway, look what's happened. Here, the bird is from above. If I turn this bird only 90 degrees, now it looks like we're looking at it from underneath. But the feathers are overlaid as from above. I looked at it and then erased all the feathers in the drawing, changed the feathers layering, and now we have our bird from underneath. But the fascinating thing is that here we have an oval blue crown that on the other one looks like the throat, and then we have the dark crown that looks like the throat on this one. Maybe just a real good fluke. So today we're going to paint our bluebird from underneath. You can paint along by downloading the sketch from the community post. I'm using my 3/8 inch Rosemary & Co. Shiraz dagger. I'll be using buff titanium to paint most of the bird from underneath, all except for the top of the head and the tail. I want to use minimal strokes, so here I am using the full sword shader. That's when the whole sword is placed down on the paper and you just pull across. If you'd like to see a rundown on 4 really practical strokes, see the video up here where we painted the bluebird from above. Now I'm painting the secondary feathers using the extended half arc. I place the sword down on the paper, push forward to make a C shape or half a C, and then extend the line, giving me oval-tipped long feathers ideal for the secondaries. This is the throat area, but I am going to paint the top of the head in the blue later. Looking at the tail feathers, I can already see the stroke that I'll be using. It'll be an arc shape, where I place my sword down, then push my brush forward, creating a C shape or an arc, and extending a little. You start to see the strokes in advance when you look at something, just by knowing what you can do with your brush. I will allow for this to dry. My bird is dry, and now it's time to just paint these little shadows in underneath the feathers. They're not very obvious or anything. So my brush is just wet. There's not going to be 2 colors, but just the one, and water. So the only thing we don't want is dripping water. And then on the very tip, with the long edge of the brush facing down, I pick up the tiniest little bit of the raw umber. Tiny little bit. Yep. And now, with the very tip of the brush and only a little bit of the sword, which I call the half sword shader, I can pull along the edge of the feather, and the water will dissolve it into a seamless little gradient. So the shadow is now always on this side. It's called the half sword shader because only the tip and some of the swords on the paper, compared to the full one where the full sword's on the paper. Put a few little marks in here, not too many. Okay, now over to the other side. Always very careful to keep my brush nice and wet and nice and flat. So there's my bird with only water in my brush plus a little bit of raw umber on the tip. I'm just going to darken the wing on the other side of the body just a little bit to suggest that the body is definitely in front of it. And also maybe just a little bit here in the neck department. And now with only water and a touch of indigo, I can do the same to these feathers down here. looking at our bird at the top, I'm thinking just to wet it gently, just this area, and then carefully drop in a little bit of cobalt teal. Leave a little eyebrow area above the eye, and then maybe just in this area here a little bit of dark, which will be the indigo, just to make it a bit more interesting. And for the beak, I'm using indigo and using the side flat of the brush as a stamp. And then with some thicker paint, I'm only using the blade of the sword as a stamp to make it thinner. And you know what? That's all we need. Of course, later you can maybe make these inner ones a little bit darker. So that was exciting. At school, we're calling this our two-faced bluebird, simply because he can be one way or the other way, just with a twist. And if you'd like to see some more funnies or learn lots of little tips and tricks, come and join me over at school. Everybody's learning heaps and we're all as happy as each other. So thanks for watching and see you next time.